After a disappointing North London Derby day defeat and Spurs crashing out of the Europa League, Spurs captain Hugo Lloris has spoken about the divide in the dressing room and how the club lacks the basics and the fundamentals. But next up for Spurs, it is a trip to Villa Park in the Premier League. And today I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Neil from the For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast to discuss everything we need to know about Aston Villa and probably the team that are going to beat us next. I'm Matt Hayes and you're listening to the Tottenham Fan Voice podcast. Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes Tottenham blog and to another episode of the Tottenham Fan Voice podcast. For those listening on audio podcast platforms, please make sure to hit that follow button. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to smash that subscribe button as well for Tottenham watch-alongs, match previews, reviews, and any type of Spurs content you could want. And look, we've said everything there is to say about that defeat against Zagreb last night, but let's look forward. Let's look to the game against Villa on Sunday. And Neil, I'm delighted to have you joining me today. How are you getting on?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thank you so much. Thanks a million for inviting me on.
It's an absolute pleasure having you on, and as always, good to get the insight of an opposition fan. And look, I suppose let's just dive straight into things. And the big question Spurs fans will want to know the answer to is: will Jack Grealish be fit?
I'm not telling you. Why would I tell you? If I tell you, it'd be all over the internet, Matt. I know you've had some really big guests on here. You're just waiting to sell my story. No, I'm only joking.
Oh, you're on to me.
I suppose the biggest thing here is, look, we just had a press conference from Dean Smith this morning at about 11 o'clock. He was pretty coy himself. He said that Grealish is running pain-free. He is running. He hasn't. They say he hasn't been back in training yet. Nobody knows. They've kept it very much under wraps, and this is something I think that Smith likes to do, to create intrigue around our best player. Let's call a spade here. He is our best player. He's our catalyst. He is our captain. He is our talisman. He is our pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, really, you know. So he, if you were to ask me as a Villa fan, I would be hopeful that I'd be more than hopeful that he's going to play Sunday. But Smith is playing the long game, the coy game, by saying it'll be a Sunday decision, and that he is very hopeful. He actually did say himself that he's hopeful that he would be there on Sunday. But who knows? This is kind of like something Smith likes to do with Grealish, because while the internet was abound with rumours that Grealish was going to be out against Leicester when he was first out with this shin injury, it didn't actually realistically break until the teams were announced. Now, we know since then that some players had transferred him out of their team in fantasy football, and apparently some coaches did it and everything. And there's a lot of knuckles wrapped and slapped and everything like that in around Villa Park and Bodymore Heath after that. But I think that Smith is. It's his 50th birthday today as well, and I think maybe the fact that he did look slightly uncomfortable, I think, when people were wishing him happy birthday today, he wanted to kind of deflect all the attention from himself, and he created the mysterious nature around will he, won't he, with Jack Grealish. But look, we want him to play. I'm sure you guys would be delighted if he was out, but it's all up in the air and no one really knows at this stage. But I would say it's trending towards him at least having some involvement against Spurs on Sunday.
Yeah, well, look, knowing Tottenham's luck, it always seems to be the opposition team get their biggest boost or whatever it is before the game starts, or their keeper is always on flying form, or their striker who hasn't scored for a year will score against Spurs. It's just typical. As a Spurs fan, I'm sure we're all in the same boat, expecting Jack Grealish to play in that game on Sunday. And look, there's no hiding, as you said, he is the best player at Villa. And I know Villa fans, kind of hate the idea that of opposition fans calling you a one-man team, and I don't believe that's true, because there's a lot of quality in that side, right from the back to the front. And yes, Jack Grealish is a pivotal part of what you do try and do, and that a lot of the tactics are kind of based around him. I know you mentioned when I was on your podcast that a lot of it is just getting the ball to Jack Grealish, but for Spurs, a big concern would be kind of over focusing on one particular player, because there's a lot of other players there that could hurt us, and one of those players is Ollie Watkins. Now, Spurs looked at Ollie Watkins in the summer and did try to get him in, apparently, but in the end the price tag was actually just a bit too much for us, which is concerning that a team, and no disrespect to Aston Villa, but a team who probably shouldn't have the financial power that Spurs do have, could then go and get that deal done. But for Ollie Watkins, it was a brilliant start to the season, had a very quiet patch, and he started going again, of course, got his first call up for the England squad. Getting in that squad for him, how much do you think that could give him a boost going into the final game before the international break?
As for Ollie Watkins, I think it's it's a milestone in his career to be called up to play for your nation. I think very few people would ever in their wildest dreams when they start off playing soccer as a kid ever believe that would be true. I suppose with Ollie Watkins coming to Aston Villa, I know that Dean Smith, and I'm sure every manager says this to every player that comes through the door, but he did say, "I'll get you in the England squad." He said the same thing to Ross Barkley, and I don't think Ross Barkley's going to be in the England squad anytime soon. But, I suppose he's got a 50% hit rate on that from what we know of when he says it to players. But Watkins deserves it. Look, he is, you guys will see it on Sunday. Watkins is the most energetic striker you will see. Watkins is like, and I hate making this comparison to Jamie Vardy because he's a different type of striker to Jamie Vardy. He's not as waspish if that's how I always describe Vardy, but he does get around, he does all the work. But Watkins is cute. He's got this kind of mentality about him from playing at Exeter. He could have moved on from Exeter to Brentford, he could have moved on a year earlier. There was a lot of teams in for him. He said no. He wanted to hone his craft at a lower level. He felt that he could be even better, increase his own personal brand and value at that level, and he did. And Exeter reaped the rewards of getting more money for him. Same thing with Brentford. We were in for him for 10 million the year previous when we'd first come up into the Premier League. We ended up having to pay 28 million because what happened was he knew in his heart and soul that he was playing out on the right hand side. He knew he could move in, play a central striker, and he did after about 3 games, I think, in the championship season last year, and he banged in over 25 goals. I think it was something like 28 goals or something in the championship last season. He was only behind Mitrovic, I think, in the goal scoring charts in the championship last season, and that obviously has more than doubled, almost trebled his price tag with Brentford. So what the guy knows when he's ready to do stuff, and he has he's got an old head on young shoulders. He's the type of striker that when he misses a shot, he doesn't put his hand in his head or turn around to the camera and go, "Oh my God, I was really close." You know the way there is that striker that goes, "Oh, I'm so happy to nearly score." He looks like he's going to go in and punch the goalkeeper for saving the ball. He looks annoyed when he doesn't score, and he's just got that kind of lunch pail, bring your hard hat to work kind of mentality about him. It's got him into the England squad. I think that he will see game time over these 3 games. Look, San Marino seems made up for him. He could go out and score 6 goals against San Marino. That's the type of player he is. He's very streaky. Like for Villa, he's a very streaky player so far. He scored obviously a hat-trick against Liverpool. He scored 2 against Arsenal. He does that, and then if he scores in a game, he'll score 2 or 3 games in a row, and then he might go on a lean period. But that's fine. Every Villa player will look at him and go, he's played every game, every minute this season, and we would be lost without him because the amount of work he puts in is absolutely criminal. Like it's unbelievable the amount of work he puts in, and hats off to Johan Lang and to Dean Smith and to Craig Shakespeare and to anyone, whoever was involved in that. And I think it had a lot of Dean Smith about it because Dean Smith was his manager at Brentford. He's came in here, he's hit the ground running, and he's been a real breath of fresh air up front for us.
Yeah, and I fully agree with 99, well, not 99, but 100% of what you said there. You talk about the work that he puts in and the fact that if he misses a chance, it's not just, I nearly scored, that's enough for me. I remember watching Brentford in the semi-final of the championship playoffs last season, and I forget who they were playing, but it was in the home leg. He got a chance, and the ball came to him, 2 defenders on him, he spun away for them and fired the ball just wide, and thinking, that's lucky, he might get another chance. Then the ball is played from the goal kick, almost immediately played long. The other team get the ball down the left wing. All of a sudden, Ollie Watkins is the one back there making a tackle to put the ball behind for a corner. He really is that player who is all over the pitch. And look, that is a trademark of what Brentford were last season, but he's brought that into what he's doing at Villa. And it is refreshing to see, as you said, he wanted to stay at Exeter and kind of hone his craft a bit there. And he's reaping the benefits of that work that he's put in. And he's definitely a player that I'd be fearful of coming up against with that Spurs defence. It's weak, it's flaky. Whether it's Alderweireld, Dyer, Sanchez, whoever it is in there, Ollie Watkins is definitely a man that could cause us problems. And on the point of defence, let's look at Villa's defence now, because again, we can talk about the England squad, but Mings getting the call up and Ezri Konsa missing out. Perhaps I do feel as though he should have been in that squad. But with the 2 of them in front of your new signing, Emi Martinez, just 28 goals conceded in the league this season for Aston Villa. It's a far cry from the side that nearly got relegated last season. How important do you think that trio in front of the goal has been for Villa this season?
It's been amazing. The transformation of our back four since Project Restart has been like night and day doesn't even cover it. It's like, do you know what it's like before Project Restart? Have you ever seen the film Space Jam? You know in Space Jam where the basketball players have their powers stolen from them by the aliens. That's what was like happened to the likes of Mings, to basically our whole back four. And after Project Restart, it was like they got their powers back and they were able to defend again. That's really the way it was. Massive credit to the likes of Richard O'Kelly and to John Terry. He's got that back four. They've got that back four humming this year. I suppose Dean Smith has a lot to do with it as well, being a former centre half himself. But the two guys, that triangle there is so important. Emi Martinez is probably, and with my claret and blue glasses off, Emi Martinez is probably signing of the season. I think, he's just been fantastic. I think he's level on clean sheets with Ederson, and obviously Ederson has had far less shots at him this season. He's just been fantastic. Tyrone Mings, obvious leader there, has had a couple of lapses of concentration, namely against Brighton. But he's a strong character. He's a leader within that team. He's captain material, And then Ezri Konsa has been standout. There's also somebody else in that back four that is literally it's just been like. If I was to question somebody over doping within the game, it would be Matt Targett. He's just been amazing this year. Last year he was sluggish, getting up and getting back and forward. A lot of the times you'd see him, carrying himself, trying to get back. This year he's been absolutely unbelievable, up and down that left wing. People talk about Luke Shaw's resurgence. Matt Targett has been absolutely fantastic, and his work with Jack Grealish there on that left hand side has been really great. Saying that, our defense has been very, very, very steady, but I suppose we're built to defend first and foremost, and to nick a goal. And I know I spoke to you on my own podcast. We are Mourinho-esque in our setup, so don't be afraid to see that on Saturday. If you're looking for free-flowing attacking football from Aston Villa, you won't see it. Contrary to some of our results this season, you don't tend to see it. It's very much counter-attacking and defend at all costs.
Yeah, and look, that's, I suppose, a big concern for Spurs, because we do at times lack that creativity in front of a staunch defence, and losing Heung-min Son as well to injury more than likely. That's a concern for us. And look, we've spoken about that back four there. We haven't even touched on Matty Cash, who again is an absolutely incredible signing. He's another player that I've watched down in the Championship at Nottingham Forest, who's always had that kind of vigour and that guile. And sometimes you can just tell when a player is going to make it at a level, and he's one who's certainly met the expectations there of and he is essentially a Premier League right back. That midfield for Aston Villa as well is quite strong. Look, I'm not sure what the story is with injuries and stuff like that, because I know you have struggled a bit, but you have the likes of John McGinn, you've Douglas Luiz, you have that new signing Morgan Sansom. Looking at that Spurs midfield, the way it could turn up and it could be the best midfield in the world, or it could turn up and they won't be able to string two passes together. Do you think that Aston Villa midfield on Sunday could take control of this game and cause Spurs problems, or do you think it will simply be that case, as you said, of just defending and trying to maybe catch Spurs in the counter?
So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the Aston Villa team, and it's something that I wouldn't have thought was the case up until maybe about the turn of the year. Our midfield is only okay. It's only okay. And the reason I say that is because we have a lot of people, like Ross Barkley was humming at the start of the season. He's really, really gone back now. John McGinn is fantastic, but the amount of work that he's been asked to do this year is it's unbelievable. Now, he does have the engine for it, but what we've started to see is our midfield has been rotated an awful lot, not even so much due to injuries, but due to form, due to Jack Grealish being out of the team, essentially. When Grealish is in the team, our midfield is an awful lot better, because everybody is a part of the pivot in the middle of midfield to try and take the ball off the centre halves, or take the ball off Douglas Luiz, get it to Jack Grealish, and then we immediately go into a 4-2-3-1 when Jack Grealish has the ball. So you won't see McGinn piling forward. There's an interesting stat with McGinn. People were criticizing him for lack of goals and assists. He's had the same amount of assists as last year, but he's had less goals. But I did a bit of a study on him recently, and he's taking shots from nearly 2 meters further out from the goal this season. So he's not allowed that opportunity to bomb forward and be a box to box midfielder anymore. So he does very much slot in and protect that center circle when we're actually in possession. And obviously Douglas Luiz is very disciplined. He's not allowed to go Like there's literally like if they set up an electric fence about 20 yards outside the goal and they say you're not allowed to go past that, you know, you have to be back there. And he does that role pretty well. So look, our midfield are two different beasts. When we've got Jack Grealish in the team, it's a lot better because Ross Barkley feels a lot more comfortable. The attacking onus isn't on him. He can be there as a point for Grealish because he plays almost up as a second striker with Grealish in the team. So Barkley and Watkins play almost side by side, or he plays just behind him. You know, I'm not even going to call it a false nine, three-quarterista, whatever you want to call it, in that role. And it gives Grealish the option for bombing on Matt Target to play the overlap there, or to come in field with Grealish to take a shot himself, or even lay the ball off to Barkley. And that's where Barkley's comfortable. With Grealish not in the team, Barkley's been asked to play in a midfield three. Barkley has been woeful in a midfield three. And he just doesn't have the engine to get back and forward when he receives the ball, but he's back to an opponent. It's a worrying sight to see how quickly or how slowly he tries to turn with the ball now. I don't know whether it's that he still has that injury or whether he's minding himself, but it's just very ponderous and slow from him. So he needs to be receiving the ball, facing the goals. And when he does some really good work. But I think teams have copped on to that and they've stayed really close to him. So to really answer your question, I expect our midfield to be very passive. I expect the likes of Højbjerg and whoever else you have inside there to be able to pass through our midfield very, very easily until you get to maybe about 20 yards outside, 10 yards, 15 yards outside our box. And then I expect you'll see the first wave of defence there from McGinn, from Louise, and maybe, excuse me, if Trezeguet is there, on the right-hand side, I'd expect you to see Trezeguet there. But I don't expect us to be herring around trying to win the ball high up and have a high press. I expect us to set up our mid block, maybe a low block, and that's what we've done all season. You can pass through our midfield, whereas last season we were trying to attack people on the edge of their own box to try and win the ball back. But there's a lot of grass there to cover, you know, if you don't do that. And you know, teams exploited us last year. So that's the way I would expect our midfield to play. I would have loved if Aston Villa signed Pierre-Emile Højbjerg last season. I just think he's a proper Premier League player. And like you guys got a steal for him. And I would be pretty worried about him just dictating things slightly, you know, on Sunday, because he's a very, very good player.
He is. Look, he's an absolute pleasure to have at the club. And you mentioned Emi Martinez as potentially signing of the summer. Some Spurs fans would argue it is Højbjerg, but the faster our season kind of falls away, the more you would have to lean to the likes of Martinez, who has actually made an impact at the team he's at. But it's really fascinating to hear you say, you know, the Villa midfield is just okay, because, you know, I work with two Villa fans, not a lot of them in Ireland. It's weird they work together. But they, you know, kind of saying that it's the Villa midfield that is so strong. And when people do kind of look towards Jack Grealish as that main man, that, you know, it's like, oh, but we also have McGinn and Louise. But the way you kind of described it there, it almost sounds as though Dean Smith has kind of changed up his tactics and his entire way of looking at this team in order to kind of account for the weaknesses in that midfield. And after credit him, it seems to be working really well. And I do want to touch on Dean Smith in a little bit as well. But I suppose, look, this is the Spurs channel. We kind of do have to ask you the question. 3-0 defeat to Zagreb last night. Mislav Orsic bagging a hat-trick. 2-1 defeat against Arsenal on Sunday. We're in a weird situation here. I think when in March, when the season is coming to its end, we actually haven't played each other in the league this season due to the postponement of the earlier game. We have to play you again, which is a big concern for us. The last 8 times we play teams in the top half of the Premier League, we've lost all 8 of those games. It seems to be falling apart for Spurs, and a lot of fans are calling for Jose out. I'm not quite there yet, but with every game that goes past, you get kind of closer. But from a Villa point of view, are you happy to be getting Spurs in this situation where we are now crashing out of Europe, losing that derby game, and season seems to be falling apart? Or do you think the Spurs might have that bit between their teeth and maybe this is a game where we could try and get some form back?
Coming off a loss to Sheffield United and a draw with Newcastle United, I don't think we're happy really. We can be fully 100% happy to see anybody, you know, at the moment. I think our how will I put it there? Our mentality is very much based at the moment on we will have that boost of Jack Grealish being back. And yes, we can always say that, look, those two really mediocre results against those two teams were that we should have beaten. There's no two ways about it. You should be beating Sheffield United, and you should be beating Newcastle United. So we can brush that out under the carpet with Jack Grealish coming back. And I think that's a fair thing for our club to be able to do because of the magnitude of the play that he brings. Are we happy to be playing Spurs? Look, from the outside looking in, I don't think we'd be happy to be playing a team like Spurs with obviously Harry Kane is there, and you've got real game changers. Obviously, that's even patronising to say. But I think when you look at it from the outside in and the way that Jose deals with pressure, I think probably Sunday you can look at it two ways. Dean Smith went the diplomatic route and said you'll be a wounded animal after losing to Dynamo Zagreb. I know a lot of fans piled in and said, look, their manager was managing from a prison cell essentially.
Yeah, typical Spurs.
So there are bits and pieces like that, but I tend to come down somewhere in between the middle. I think both teams would snap each other's hands off for a draw and a steadying game. I think Jose could spin it in the way of we got a draw without Son. We got a draw against a good Villa team who've taken the scalps of a lot of teams this season, and I think that would be, that he would be happy with that. It would arrest a slide essentially that you guys have had recently, and he'd be able to talk to, well, we've been frail defensively, and there's been question marks over Dyer and Alderweireld is pushing on, and you'd be able to spin it that way. I think very much so. And for Villa, I think it would be the same. It would be, listen, we've taken points off another team that last year would have rolled over us, and we've got Jack Grealish back. He's got 90 minutes under the belt. So that's kind of where I come down. My feeling for the weekend is that it will be, it could be a 0-0 draw, and I think that both teams would be pretty happy with that. The teams would be. I don't think either fan base would be happy, because I think we're at the stage, the point of the season where Spurs fans need to win because they want to get the best European position as possible. Villa fans are seeing Europe, especially with the Europa Conference in the new season as well. We're looking at Europe as hey, we might as well take it if we can get it kind of a situation. And I think both team sets of fans will want to win, but I'd say if you had Jose and or if you had Jose and Dean Smith, sat down on a lie detector, I think both of them would take a draw at the weekend just to steady the ship in either side, and for the good PR that the draw will bring for both teams.
Yeah, look, I'd bite your hand off for a draw right now. Beyond any doubt, it's just any bit of points on the board is a big thing for Spurs. And thank you for that. It is always fascinating to kind of get the insight of an opposition fan on the situation at Spurs. And I think with you did kind of hit the nail on the head with that one. Look, for anyone who is watching or listening, make sure to tune into Matt Hayes' Tottenham blog on Sunday. Further watch along for that game. But before we do go, I want to get your opinion on Dean Smith. And I'm a massive fan of Dean Smith. I think what he did at Brentford was absolutely sensational, and the platform and the kind of fundamentals that he brought into that club is what I think will help Thomas Frank bring them out of the Championship and back into the Premier League. And he's come into Aston Villa last season and had a very, very difficult start. Of course, he's gone through some personal things as well, but he's always been kind of that man that you can trust with Aston Villa. I don't think any Villa fan has ever called for him to go, even last season when it was kind of looking at the potential of relegation. And he's come in this season and everything has changed. He's, as we say, kind of accounted for the weaknesses in that team, kind of transformed the tactics a little bit, and it's working perfectly. The scouting that was done in the summer by Villa was absolutely sensational. Those signings have been a massive difference. And look, this could be me looking at it with the wrong mindset, I suppose. I'm not a Villa fan. I'm not going to have the kind of feelings and the wishes for the club that Villa fans do have. But my concern is that Villa are now at a stage where, and again, we kind of spoke about this in your podcast, where in the past Spurs and Villa have been kind of similar in similar positions. I remember when we got the Champions League, it was back in 2011 or 2012, it was Villa and Man City actually competing for that. And I think did City beat Villa or something towards the end of the season that rules you out. But Villa are in this position now where you do have the potential to go on and become a European club, because the basis of that club is there. But my concern for Villa is that Dean Smith isn't the man to bring him beyond this level. And it may seem harsh to say that given what he has achieved with the club, but do you think if Villa do want to get to that next level, make that next step, do you think you might have to cut your ties with Dean Smith, or do you believe in him to be that man to make you a consistent European team?
Oh, this is the $1 million question. This is why some Villa fans wake up for in the morning to have this argument on Twitter. This
struck a nerve.
This keeps people going. I'm firmly Dean Smith. Dean Smith can, he can walk on water, I think, at the moment. Villa fan, has been all his life. He's a coach more so than a manager, but you know what he is? He's just a down to earth bloke. Like I said in my own podcast, Dean Smith's the kind of fella that, you know, he's making sandwiches for his kids going to school. He'll make 2 extra ones for himself. He'll wrap them in tinfoil and he'll bring him to Bodymore Heath, and that'll be his lunch, you know. And he'll drive up in his 2006 Renault Clio, and, you know, he'll just close the door behind him. Might forget to lock it, you know, but, you know, because he's just, the world is great. That's the kind of guy. He's just so down to earth. He's such a lovely, kind of measured and just sees the wood from the trees from a life perspective. I think is very important. That's very important. I think, and a lot of managers forget that. And look, I think that's kind of there's a big contrast between himself and Jose in a lot of aspects with regards to that. Dean Smith doesn't want to be the circus master. He doesn't want to be leading doesn't want the conversation to be about him. Fans wanted the conversation to be about him when Bielsa was getting all the hum, the pats in the back at the start of the season, and Smith was happy enough. But where I'm getting to here with regards to this is just painting a picture of the man. That can be a positive and a negative, as you mentioned. But I think that Smith is cute enough that he through the course of him coming up through the years with Walsall and Brentford, he had Richard O'Kelly with him. But what he's done is he's diversified his thought process, and knowing that, listen, yeah, I'm not a Pep or a Jose. I can't bring in that player. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Craig Shakespeare, who does have a lot of clout, you know, and you can say Craig Shakespeare did it with Leicester. We're similar story. You know, you want to come with us, he'll turn you into Riyad Mahrez, he'll turn you into N'Golo Kante or whatever. So, you know, he has that. And also the trump card here as well is John Terry. Don't underestimate, like, for what, you know, you might love him, you might hate him. And I, as a player, I didn't really like him. But since he's come into Aston Villa, he's done the same as Dean Smith. He's bought into literally, you know, working in the shadows and not being out in front. And I thought that was really strange, because I thought Villa would push him out at every available opportunity. But they haven't. But he still is that big name. You know, he does have that aura about him, and he's declined interviews at Sheffield Wednesday, Bournemouth, and so on. So that's part number 2. And then part number 3 as well is Smith knows that probably the signing of players at that level is a small bit beyond him. I think he knows it anyway. So what he's done is he's reinforced the scouting aspect and the signing and the player acquisition part of Aston Villa by bringing in Johan Lang. Johan Lang is a young guy who has a lot of credibility within the European game, coming from the Danish leagues, and he's a good head for scouting, and he's in there as our director of football. And also Mark Harrison for young players. Mark Harrison was with West Brom, had their academy absolutely humming. He was seen as probably the best academy manager in the top flight at the time, and we poached him from our rivals as well. So what Smith lacks in his aura, you know, with regards to his brand, I suppose, in and around the continental game, he's brought in mitigating factors that you could paint a story and you could sell the club to a signing. Now, we don't know how well that's going to work when we go into the absolute top tier of footballers. Like, if we were to go and try and sign a Christian Eriksen, would we be able to convince him that Aston Villa are back? Or would Aston Villa are on a good footing? I can't say, because I don't know. But I think that the club have tried to give him as much help as they possibly can. And obviously Christian Purslow being the overall not chairman, but can't remember what they call him, the CEO of the club at the moment as well. Obviously, he has had his hands in a lot of pies with regards to top football in both the UK and in Europe as well. So I think he's tried to mitigate it as much as he can. He's never going to be that big leading light unless Villa go away and win the Premier League, but he's tried to mitigate it as best he can. But only time will tell if they can get the top strikers, the top midfielders, the top centre halves, you know, into the club, or whether they're going to be, you know, kind of treading water with losing players to the bigger clubs over time. I don't know what the situation is going to be there. That was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
Don't apologise at all. That's a fantastic answer. And again, the insight is incredible. And look, I'm sure Spurs fans will be grateful for that going into this game against Aston Villa. Look, we'll be playing you again soon. I might just replay that for the Spurs fans and be happy about it. But look, it is there's so many questions that will go unanswered in football until maybe in a way it could be too late to make a decision on what may happen. And look, I think Villa are a club that you'll be tough push to find someone who doesn't like Aston Villa, unless of course they're a Birmingham fan. They're like a typical English club for me. They're like Everton. So it's like Newcastle before Steve Bruce kind of ruined them. They're like a proper English club that people will be happy to see succeed. And if they did, like when they did go down to the Championship, there's an air of you kind of miss them, but you always feel they'll be back. And I hope it works out for Dean Smith at Villa, because like I said, he's a manager I respect and I really do like. And look, fingers crossed they can go on and become that team that the potential is there to do, and they've been so close to becoming in the recent past as well. But look, Neil, I suppose we will leave it there. Thank you again. It's been an incredible 30-minute conversation on all things Aston Villa. Hopefully Spurs fans have a better knowledge of the club going into what I said is probably our next defeat in the game on Sunday. Before we do wrap up, do you want to let us know where we can find you on socials and stuff like that?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I do most of my work there on Twitter and at Love McGrath Pod. I'm the only podcast called For the Love of Paul McGrath, the only Paul McGrath referenced podcast out there, so you can't really miss me. You get me on all podcasts, and I've started to tiptoe into the waters of YouTube. I was always a bit conscious, the prematurely grey beard, the haggard looking leathery face. I wasn't sure whether YouTube was the place for me, but you never know. Makeup and lighting does wonders. So might be doing a small bit more on YouTube. So you can find me on YouTube there as well. But thanks so much for having me on, Matt. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to Sunday now to see what the future holds for both clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, everyone, I highly recommend you to go and check Neil out on all those platforms that he did mention. And again, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. I really appreciate your time. Look, for those everyone watching probably knows me at this stage. Make sure to subscribe to Matt Hayes Tottenham blog. Follow the podcast on whatever platform you may be watching. I just want to remind you as well that the podcast is now part of the Sports Social Podcast Network, the UK's first dedicated sports podcast network. Find the next show you love or join the team at www.sport-social.co.uk. Make sure to tune in on Sunday for the live watch along for Aston Villa against Tottenham. It's bound to be an incredible show, hopefully following a very, very entertaining game. But for now, thank you very much to everyone who's listened, who's watched. Make sure to like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And as always, come on, you Spurs.